I'll open the meeting. This is the Budget Committee meeting. My name's Councillor Greg Sayers. I'm the Chair. This is a committee of the whole. We'll just go through the protocols of absences and declarations and electronic attendance. So first of all, I've got some apologies. Apologies from Angela Dalton and Tony Kate, and lateness from Al Filipina, Mike Lee, Richard Hills, who's currently on council business, and Christine Fletcher, so we can expect them a little bit later in the meeting. Are there any more apologies? If not, could I have a mover for that? Yep. Thank you. Put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Okay, just for those who need to attend via electronic link, we just need to approve that. I've got Councillor Foley and Councillor Al Filipina both needing to attend on the electronic link today. Are there any others? No, that's all. So I'll put that. Could I have a mover for that, for their attendance? Be here, Desley. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? Against? So that's carried, so welcome. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to do with any of the agenda items today? Yeah, we have an interested councillor. Very good, thank you. No petitions today? Thank you. And no local board input today? Very good. Extraordinary business. There being none, we'll go on to the first substantive item, which is on your agenda, councillors, is item number 7. Now, just before we kick into the item, gentlemen, I'm going to ask the supporting officer here, our Chief Finance Officer, Ross Tucker, just to make some introductory comments, which I think could be helpful in terms of sensing Ross and helpful to the councillors. So and ISB members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll just talk a bit about the annual budget process, and then I'll hand over to the team that will take you through the overview to decision-making report. Perhaps just before I start, just sort of one reminder, as you'll all be aware, just in relation to the Auckland Airport shares, there's a trading halt at the moment. You've all been sort of advised on that. Our strong advice is that while that process is underway, trading halt in place, that you refrain from making public comments, and just bear in mind this is a public meeting. So yeah, just a reminder to our advice is not make public comments around that process. There'll be updates from the Auckland Future Fund in due course. In terms of the annual budget process, as I said, the team will take you through it. The terms of reference for this committee are all related to all things annual budget, including deciding on the items for consultation, the approving the consultation document, etc. The way that we've kind of run this process from the beginning has been a little bit broader than that. As the team will talk about, there's a range of different decisions that you might need to consider, this year. What we've done is have one set of strategic discussions where we've kind of got your views on what key changes for the year. Some of those things relate to the annual budget, some of them don't. But we've kind of run it as one process rather than have 2 or 3 different streams of work go on. We've kind of run a process where we've kind of got your views on what are the key things you want to see changing. What is the advice that you need. We've brought forward advice on a range of matters, and now we have a mayoral proposal. But this is where things start to diverge. Some things will go through the formal annual budget process, other things will go through other channels. And importantly, a key element of that, the CCO review work, that's CCO reform work that's underway, and where proposals have been made, that fits under the decision making of the governing body. So certain things will go there. So while it's been one process to date, one mayoral proposal, now the processes start to diverge. That was always intended, we kind of do the work, give the advice, and then send things down the appropriate process pathway. So I'll hand over to Michael and Tristan to just talk a little bit about that. And I've got a couple of slides just to make that as clear as possible, just so we're kind of knowing, what are the process steps and where do different decisions go.
Okay, just before we do that, thank you for that, Ross. I guess what I've taken away from that is particularly, I know we're on item 7, but in item 9, when we discuss the actual mayoral proposal, it's, in terms of discussing the CCO reform, amendments, debate, questions, that's for next week. It'll be moved to next week rather than today.
Yes, so next week there'll be an item, the governing body around CCO reform. So that's the place for questions, debate, decisions are based off that item. So the items we're going to discuss today, as Mike will step through, are basically everything else other than listings in that sort of CCO reform space.
Right, so, and Ross, while I've got you on a roll, I'd like to get this live for the debate and find a mover and seconder for the motion that's up there. So councillors may be wondering why B's crossed out, and that's probably relevant to what you've been talking about.
Yes, so item B is as part of the process we're working through here. That item B relates to the time frame for the statement of intent process, which is around CCOs, which actually relates more to the CCO reform decisions, CCO discussions that are going to happen in governing body. It doesn't really relate to the annual plan process itself. So in terms of staff reviewing that, where does that sort of sit? Where should the delegation be? That should really go straight to governing body. So that will be something that is worked through and at the appropriate governing body meeting as part of the SOI process. So it's not a decision that the budget committee needs to be making today. That's all it is. So it's kind of we'll withdraw that particular recommendation and just leave you with the 2 other ones.
All right, thank you for that. And just to remind councillors, the purpose of this agenda item is to provide an overview of the annual plan, as you've just said, Ross, on the process to date, outline the decisions required at today's budget committee meeting, which you've done, and inform the next steps of progress to finalise the annual plan, which, Michael, you'll take us through shortly. So just before that, I'll just ask if anybody would like to move the current motion or recommendation. Thank you, Desley. Councillor Simpson. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, okay. Councillor Baker, thank you very much. Very good. Thank you. I hope that's helpful, councillors, as an introduction for today. So I hand over to you, Mr. Burns. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and kia ora, members. We'll take the report as read and just look to highlight a few key things. The first one I had was the removal of the second recommendation that we've just discussed. Secondly, the Audit and Risk Committee considered the annual budget process, risks and the risk management approach yesterday and resolved to advise you that an appropriate approach has been taken to managing those risks. So that's second thing. And then the third piece is just to flesh out, I suppose, a bit of the process piece that Ross has talked about how we get from, here we are. So just to talk through our annual plan process. So Mayor and Councillor direction document that looked to the areas of focus for the next year was issued back in August and kicked off through this annual plan process. In response to that, a number of workshops, briefings and advice papers came through the Budget Committee and through workshops of the Budget Committee, and those have informed the mayoral proposal. So that process has worked its way through the Budget Committee, but now that those things have been firmed up, that advice has been reflected or taken on board as the mayor's prepared his proposal, then we need to ensure that the appropriate decisions are made in the appropriate places. And so this is where we get the divergence between those decisions that need to be made today and those that are more appropriate to be made next week at the governing body. So those that will be made today will be around items for consultation for the annual plan. and they will flow through to the consultation document. Once those decisions are made, our staff will go away, as we do, prepare consultation material and bring that back to you for adoption in February. And then we'll go out and discuss those issues with the people of Auckland through February and March. This second slide, and this is the only other slide, just quickly identifies what those issues are. So the issues today will be around agreeing to consult, proposed recommendations are agreeing to consult on the funding of destination marketing and events, and that's around supporting in principle the bed night visitor levy, around agreeing principles, direction, and looking for further advice on group shared services, and then also Andrew Duncan will seek your agreement to consult on updates to a variety of targeted rates and fees and charges as we do every year and required to. Those issues that will flow through to the governing body next week will be those items around CCO reform, and then also agreeing to the draft Te Puna Maunga Authority operational plan, and those will come through to the governing body next week. So I think that kind of lays out the process and looks to help work out which decisions will be made when. So other than that, take the rest of the report as read and stand by for questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. Any questions, councillors? No, there being none? Okay, thank you, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, so just in terms of the process forward and differentiating between today and next week, Michael, just so you said the items, this essentially decides items for consultation. So obviously, if people have got questions about what should or shouldn't be consulted upon, then today's the appropriate venue for that, isn't it? If it's to do with items for consultation.
Yes, today is the day where we set what will be consulted on and decisions made.
Okay.
So just for clarity, Michael, there, because I'm just don't want to be confused as the chair, if those consultations was to do with CCO reform, for example, is today the appropriate time for that, or is next week the appropriate time for that discussion when we've seen the modified proposal, I guess?
To talk about that, so we haven't seen the proposal yet on the CCO reform. Today we're asking you to make decisions on what the proposal in front of you around consultation on these budget items, and that doesn't preclude the governing body making whatever decision it wants to make about any other consultation, either as part of or alongside our annual budget. So decisions today don't necessarily prejudice anything the governing body might decide next week.
So what you're saying, that if people want to push for other items to be in, then that happens next week? Yes, that can happen next week, because obviously that's a concern. And despite the fact this is about the mayoral proposal, which a big chunk of it is to do with CCO reform, you're not wanting any of that discussed today then? Is that it?
Yeah, so the intention is to discuss the CCO reform next week when you have the final mayoral proposal, you have advice, recommendations in front of you, you can make decisions around consultation. Any sort of other budget items, today is the appropriate time to consider those.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor, that helped. That's helpful. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair. Just for the CCO reform report on the 12th, there's been some pretty dense material that has gone through workshops to help inform that decision. I just want to have confirmation that the report, at least the attachments to the report, will contain all that information to ensure that that information that informs our decision becomes completely public-facing.
So that information's already public in that it was attached to the draft mayoral proposal that was released last week. So the advice to the mayor on CCO reform was included alongside our staff advice on budget matters and other matters in attachments to the draft mayoral proposal, and I expect it will be attached to the final that goes for next week.
Okay, and then any subsequent information that might come in, and that might be correspondence from, I don't know, the chair of a CCO to the chief executive or the mayor or councillors generally. I'm not expecting individual emails to councillors. I just want to make sure that all of that information is daylighted, and we are aware of it. My second question is, will the report address, at this stage, there's a lack of an implementation plan. So we've got this concept of CCO reform that has to go through a big gateway to implementation, and that's the structure of an implementation plan, which is absent at the moment. And in my eyes, I'm struggling with large parts of the CCO reform because I can't see how it converts to the new reality. So how is this final report going to satisfy the members here on the December 12th to give them confidence that there is a pathway to implementation? What might that part of the report cover to give us a sense of comfort about implementation?
So I'm just getting advice here. So yes, information on implementation will come to the 12th based on workshop discussions last week. And so that will come through as an attachment to the mayoral proposal.
And will that address, will there be a risk profile on the CCO reform? There is one on the CCO reform concept. Will there be a risk profile, or actually my request is that there's a risk profile on the discussion around implementation. And that might be lack of momentum in delivering projects, the loss of talent as the so-called lift and shift happens, if that was to be the direction, the loss of expertise of, say, directors that are specific in their unique knowledge categories, and the capacity of this elected body to pick up that work, because there is an expectation that this body picks up the work. So I'd really like to get a sense of the capacity and the expertise that is then going to be relied upon to do the work better, because we're not talking about doing the same, we're talking about a dramatic improvement. That's the expectation of the reform. So I'm wanting to see conveyed to this group on the 12th a sense that political capacity as governors, management capacity in their task in picking up the CCO transfers is going to be reliable, and that we're not going to lose pace.
Kia ora, Councillor. Through the Chair, I'm happy to answer that. Councillor Darby, thank you. We have heard that. And we also heard that in the workshop that we held last week as well, and similar themes. So the intention is to provide that level of advice. We've also said to you that it won't be a full implementation plan. There will be options because there are all sorts of permutations on this. We hear that. We will provide that. There'll be an opportunity to discuss that, and hopefully that will help in your decision on the 12th.
Thanks, Chris. I've got Councillor Turner followed by Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, all the stuff I've read, I'm still a little confused about group shared services, and also with yesterday's announcements and stuff about things to do with Auckland Transport. And there has been some concern from certainly Watercare. I know they've been talking behind the scenes, but just the group shared services, I really just want to air that here. That sits you know, where does that sit? What are the savings we're expecting, and what's the level of engagement that we expect the CCOs to buy into? How's it going to work now with all these reforms?
Yep, so I mean, so CCO, the shared service bit is part of the meal proposal, so that will be covered in the later item today. There's recommendations there that talks about, direction there around shared services, and there's direction to the Chief Executive to get on with moving ahead with some of that stuff. There's an existing group shared services board, so it's about moving ahead with what's there, with a bit of extra pace and urgency. Broader discussions around transport, I think will come a bit later as part of next week.
Thank you. I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. If you want to ask again when we get to item 9, you're welcome to ask further questions on that. Daniel.
Good morning, Chair, and sorry for my late arrival, but a couple of things from me, if I may. Can I just understand when we can expect I know that we got the paper on the 12th with respect to CCO reform. I presume that paper is either written or close to being written. I know that we have a standard time for when we receive the report, but I'm just wondering if there's any chance that we may be able to receive that report earlier, if it is ready, or how early could we receive the first draft of that advice?
Through the chair. The agenda will go out for the 12th of December meeting on Monday. At this stage, I believe that will include the mayoral proposal, but we will advise you if that comes at any different time, but that's as I understand it.
Okay. I don't want to presuppose what letters we may be receiving from boards. I mean, if I may, Chair, I actually think through you, if you could have a conversation with the Mayor, probably the advice that I'd want to receive from particularly board chairs of the CCOs is if they feel that they have the confidence to continue in that role, and if they don't, I think we need advice about that, because it probably requires those people to make a decision early and to advise us as to whether they will participate in that transitional process. So if you could talk to the Mayor about that. Can I just Chair, I don't presume that everybody's going to agree with the scope of this on the 12th, nor necessarily be satisfied with all the information. I am presuming beyond the 12th of December, if there is a decision with respect to CCO reform, there will be subsequent information that will have to be provided in the form of report updates about the transitional arrangements over probably the next 12 months. Will that be reported to the Budget Committee or to the governing body? Do you know?
Through the chair, that's a good question. I would suspect, but would leave that, I think, with the Mayor to discuss with colleagues, but I would expect probably with the governing body, because it relates to the CCO reform as opposed to budget, because budget is predominantly around financial spend, and the CCO reform is bigger and wider than that. So that would be my recommendation. Yep.
Okay, well, my final two comments, Chair, I think that's fine, but I do think that there will have to be some discussion as to how could I have a degree of oversight of that as well. They'll probably have an interest there, although they can speak for themselves on that. And if I may, Chair, I do think that, and today, but also next week, if you can speak to the Mayor for next week's meeting as well, I think that notwithstanding standing orders, there is going to have to be a real effort to ensure that any colleague who wants to speak on these matters is able to do so. Clearly, these are contentious issues, and I would like to listen to all views on this matter, and I think that we should make every effort to ensure that that is accommodated. Notwithstanding if people are frustrated with the advice, I think that there are views and I'm certainly happy to listen to the views of people for whom I don't agree with their view, but I think they should be able to have their say. So if you could discuss that with the Mayor, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
I thank you, Councillor, and obviously the Mayor's sitting here listening to you as well. And I understand what you're asking in terms of the chairmanship of that meeting, Daniel. Yeah. There are no further questions. So, there is one. Sorry, gentlemen. Yep, Councillor Walker.
I understand that the CCO reform is not going to be discussed today, but having said that, some matters around it have come up. So one of the expectations that I have is that there will be adequate options presented to us around, retaining expertise, for example, as much and all as you might lose a board on a CCO. That doesn't mean to say that there can't be some form of advisory board, such as for the art gallery or the zoo, or that might be customised and may actually have a higher degree of expertise and competency than might exist now. So I would hope that those sorts of options are canvassed, so that we're not unaware of them.
Through the chair, absolutely. Yes, we will, and there will be.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you very much. There are no further questions, so thank you, gentlemen. You can step back from the table in case there's some debate or comments about the item. I have let it, even though this was a note just for staff, senior staff in the room, I have let the questions go beyond just the process presentation, because I felt councillors had some very important questions they wanted to just outline early on. They're probably more appropriate, perhaps now as good as any. So, yeah, thank you, councillors, for your participation around that.
Are you going to move that, or is it
So it's been moved and seconded. Yeah.
Can I just
Yep, we're going into that now.
Can I just make a quick comment then? I won't repeat what I've just said, which is largely questions, but probably my further question, and I'd like to see this come through in the 12th December report. There is an expectation that this body is going to be doing a lot more, and management are going to be doing a lot more. So one of the things I've not asked in the past, but I ask now for the report, is an understanding of what is the health of the core Auckland Council. You know, how healthy is it in terms of staff engagement feedback to actually undertake, to receive this transfer? I think that's a pretty fundamental thing that we need to understand. Can this structure receive such a considerable change in its form? Because the council core form changes dramatically. So is this core council management structure healthy? Now, we can see that through a number of surveys, and I'd like to see how healthy this organisation is compared with, say, Tātaki or Ekapanuku or Auckland Transport through their surveys. You know, where is the health? This is the receiving body. It is going to have to be fit and ready, really fit and ready. Otherwise, the city is at risk of coming to a grinding halt. That's the bare bone fact of it. So I'd like to see that conveyed in the report writing as well. How healthy are we? Both, and that's politically and at a management level as well, because both sides, political governance and Auckland Council management, are going to have to be up and running on this very, very quickly.
Okay, Chris, they've acknowledged that. I've had some feedback from the local boards too around their one, I don't know if it's too early or at some stage, but I'll just express it now because it's been expressed to me in my role as chair, around how local boards, if they're delegated more responsibility, more accountability and more time, has any thought, will any thought be given to extra time or extra remuneration, or making some of those roles full-time, or paying on merit above and beyond basic core duties? That type of discussion will come out from the local boards at some time, so we probably need to be prepared for that. Chair David.
O kanu te mihi ki aku Mr. Chairman, kanu te mihi ki aku te tēnei wā. I just want to make some comments now the questions are finished, but without stating the obvious, considering we're talking about decision making, in particular for myself and Deputy Chair for Haukura, this is the only forum we have to participate in decision making, because the matter will go to GB on the 12th, and I guess the question in my mind was just more of a comment than a question, is how will this committee or the GB take into consideration the way we vote today? Will that be given any recognition whatsoever, or are we just here to fill the gap today? So that's on my mind, right? We would have hoped that, like the CCO review, we were offered a seat at the table for the GB, and I was offered a vote. So that has happened before, but whether that can happen again, well, that's entirely up to you. I guess we'll look forward to what happens through the course of today and next Thursday. But one thing I'm not naive about is there won't be final decisions come 12 December. Every annual plan waits till May, if I got it right. That's when final decisions are made. And that's when you all kind of find at the end other people want other things at the last minute. And that's just my own opinion from what I've seen over the years. So I'm not a fool to think today or the 12th is the final decision making what goes out in the annual plan for the 25 year. But again, I just want to reiterate, because we have only got this chance today, that we hope that you will all consider what we have to say or vote on and the way we vote and how that might apply to you when you vote. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, David. Are there any other comments? Yep.
Actually, I'd just like to respond to what the Chair of Te Hikura has raised. It kind of is unfortunate that the situation sets up that you don't get a vote on the GV, but I'd certainly like to have you speaking next week. It's really important. One of the core things of this council is that we do make use of the voice that Maori are given here at the table. And so, in fact, I would, I don't know what the legal situation is, but I mean, I would like to see that GV at least listens to Te Hikura, if not allows them to vote. They're an important part of the council. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. All right. All right. Wayne.
Sure. Just speaking to the budget component for tourism and business events, major events, investment and the like. I mean,
Wayne, I'm just looking at the item here. Do you want to save that for item 9 rather than item 7? This is just a process update on the process.
Happy to do that.
That's probably, yeah, be better to pitch it then. Yeah. Right. On that note, I'll just put the motion, please, on voices. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 8. Item 8, I'll just ask the officers to come forward, but while they're coming forward, this is the annual plan local board feedback on the mayoral proposal on the regional topics for consultation. The purpose is to provide an overview of local board input on regional consultation and the content for the annual plan for next year. I'd just like to add that you may remember last week we had all 21 local boards come and speak to us directly to give their feedback. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare for that, so they made a big effort, and so I just hope that we all listen to that feedback. I hope you've all read their feedback and you've all will consider their feedback with the due weight it deserves, because a lot of effort has gone into that. The other thing too, an invitation went out to all the local boards for the Mayor and myself to go and visit those local boards in person if they had further questions about that mayoral proposal. Of the 21, 5 accepted that invitation, and between us, the Mayor and I were able to go and speak directly with those most of the local boards that had all their members there, and get their feedback directly as well and answer questions. Okay. So on that note, I'll hand over for the presentation. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. We're here to provide a summary of the local board feedback on the draft mayoral proposal and the regional topics for consultation. We will take the report as read, and I will hand to Renee and Phoebe to provide a summary. Kia ora.
Kia ora. This report provides a summary of the local board adopted feedback and advocacy on the draft mayoral proposal and regional topics for the annual plan. When making decisions, the governing body, through the Budget Committee today, has a statutory obligation to consider the views and preferences of the local board when making decisions on the annual plan. Local boards also presented feedback at the Budget Committee workshop last week of their views. Full resolutions are attached to the report. There was feedback on all the main categories in the mayoral proposal, including planning and paying for growth, funding major events, destination marketing and visitor attraction, CCO reform and local board funding. We will take this report as read. As noted by the Chair, it has been a short turnaround for everyone, as the draft mayoral proposal was released early the week before last, and the local board business meetings were held between Tuesday and Thursday that same week. We've done our best to capture the board's intentions in this report, and we're happy to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, being no questions, so it's been moved. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Ferry. There being no questions, I can ask you to step back from the table. Yeah. I thought, did you second that, or did you just ask for a question? Oh, you did both. Oh, sorry, that's my fault. Okay, back on track. Julie, thanks.
Kia ora. I just wanted to ask about the fairer funding aspect. We've obviously had a lot of concern from local boards and a lot of email traffic in the last couple of days to clarify some things for them. But prior to resolution, how much information did they have on the possible local board budget funding changes? So I know we've had more conversation in the last couple of days, and I think they've got a clearer picture now, but I just want to be clear about how much they knew before they resolved. Thanks.
Kia ora. The local boards received the amount of cost pressures, or the estimates for cost pressures, this week. So before that they made their resolutions, they were aware that there were some cost pressures coming. Those are quite estimates at the moment, so they hadn't had them before the resolutions.
I think that's just important context for people to be aware of and considering the feedback. Thank you so much for collating it. I know it's a big undertaking. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Simpson, a comment, okay. No further questions. All right, Renee, thank you very much, and team, Phoebe and Luann. Right, we'll move into comment and debate. So, yeah, Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I just wanted to make the point that the proposal came out on the 19th, and local boards, some of them were having to give feedback on the 19th. It was hundreds of pages long, and I just want to note that there was basically 3 days between the first time they received it and the last day of feedback. So it was very concentrated, and I do appreciate the staff putting the report together. But I also know from the local board's perspective, it was a lot to read in a very short period of time, and they didn't really, some of them had less than 3 hours to actually make their resolution. So I just think we should be mindful, it's a legislative process that local boards have to give their feedback, but it was very short and very confined, and they didn't have a lot of context. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor, for your comment. Any further comments? Okay. All right, I'll put the recommendation there. Please, on voices, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried on the voices. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Okay, probably the most substantive item for the day, item 9, the actual plan, the mayoral proposal. Just the purpose, I'll ask visiting officers to come forward. The purpose is to present the mayoral proposal for the annual plan for next year for the Budgets Committee's consideration and to recommend key items from the proposal for public consultation. The motion is up there at the moment. I'll get it live so we can move into it. So I'm happy to move that. Is my recommendations, anyone happy to second that? Oh, would you like to move it? Okay, okay. Okay, the mayor will second. I probably should have put you forward first. Okay, that's all right. It's all good. Okay, thank you very much. So that's live. So are you presenting to it or?
Thank you, Chair. As outlined earlier in the day by staff, today's decisions are not about CCO reform. And while I know many of you will be itching to get into the detail in response to yesterday's announcement on transport reform, you'll get your opportunity to discuss this next week and there'll be a bit more information, feedback on yesterday. I've asked the staff to set up a workshop for us to discuss the changes and what this means for us and outline next steps. I'm also working with my staff to update my mayoral proposal in time for next Thursday's governing body so the transport changes are reflected in my overall CCO reform package. In response to the advocacy from elected members, specifically Councillors Newman, Handley and Councillor Ferry, I want to provide some reassurance that local boards are receiving advice to support them and won't be required to consult on changes to service levels to address any potential cost pressures. I've asked staff to provide clear evidence to the Joint Governance Working Party and local boards in the new year. I support the approach we agreed to go through with the LTP on the fairer funding of local boards. I still believe in that. Today is about everything but CCO reform. As a result, I want us to focus on those issues and leave that discussion for next Thursday. As outlined in my draft proposal and in the report for this item, I've no intention in straying from our LTP, which is like a social contract with Aucklanders. That means we stick to what we agreed by keeping rate increases at 5.8% and aiming for a debt to revenue limit of 250%, delivering a further $47 million in savings on top of existing savings and continuing to invest in services and activities that Aucklanders care about with $4 billion worth of capital investment. I acknowledge we have risks to manage. I'm particularly concerned about the increasing cost of the buyout scheme, and I want staff to be more diligent and scrutinise all associated costs. We have to do better. I want us to agree to consult on the bed night visitor levy to provide for a more sustainable and appropriate funding mechanism for major events and destination marketing. A levy between 2.5% and 3% would raise $27 million in Auckland. Investment at this level would enable a full program of this activity. While this will require legislative change, it doesn't stop us from asking Aucklanders what they think. At the same time, we should continue it closely with our industry leaders to advocate to central government. Industry support is there for this, and I'm keen to keep working with them on a mutually beneficial solution. I want to make it clear that I support this activity being funded and don't propose to see any related events lost from this pipeline. This is about finding a sustainable funding pathway. In the report, I also outline other issues that will require some agreement and further advice from our CEO, Phil Wilson. These are speeding up group shared services, creating a framework to help us make better growth-related decisions, and an updated approach to procurement. All items outlined The report will help us to get on with delivering the things Auckland want from us. It will help us be more efficient, more coordinated, and stop relying so much on ratepayer funding for things when we can be looking for funding elsewhere. Other items that were mentioned in the direction document but aren't included in this report, like unfunded strategies and the review of our communication strategy, are still being dealt with by staff. An update via me note will be provided to us in the next few days, and staff will report back to the governing body when appropriate. Jazz is here to help respond to questions you might have, along with other subject matter experts. Finally, I want to thank you all for your input and thoughts through this process. As always, I'm really happy we have grown-up discussions about the way we govern together for Auckland. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just, in our attachments, it's the attachments to the agenda there, so a bit of reading there. I'll open up for questions, so I'll start with you, Wayne, if you want to bring your...
Sure. I've just got some questions around the budget for destination marketing events and the like, and the related issue of the advocacy for the bed tax. My concern is around the information that we're going out with, that we're informing people about. One of the things that we don't cover off is the position that's been put to us on the part of the industry, that's hospitality, New Zealand, tourism industry, Aotearoa Hotel, who are all opposed to a bed tax. And obviously the difficulty of getting anything through the government when that is their position. The other thing that concerns me is the adequacy of the information around what we are going to do to fill that gap. As it stands, there isn't any indication of any contribution from the industry when that has been the case in the past, so I don't know why there's an absence there. And the other related issue around getting money from the government in the interim, because they put up the international visitor charge recently from $35 to $100 a year, and quite obviously there has to be a not inconsiderable amount of budget available there, but again that's not shown as an option. So is it too late to cover off some of these things in terms of what we go out with? Because I would have thought that they are very real prospects.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's all a very good question. So in terms of the industry feedback, we are still receiving the industry feedback, and the intention is that with the mayoral proposal, once it's finalised, and the report that'll go on the governing body agenda, that we will present some of that feedback. I don't think it's accurate to say that those groups are opposed to a bed tax. They are wanting to look at different ways that would be applied on a national basis and what the funding would be used for. So I think that's more accurate, and we're waiting for some further feedback from them on that. And just reminding that the consultation document itself won't be fully prepared until February next year, and it goes out at that point. So there will be some more information that does come to light in between now and then. In terms of the IVL, those are ongoing conversations that the Mayor's office and the Mayor is having with the Minister as well. So we expect those conversations to be ongoing.
Going after that extra money.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I received a letter from the tourism industry, if I call it that they'd sent to the Mayor, I think around the 26th of November, clarifying their position. It would be useful if that sort of information was circulated to councillors so that we understand what their position is. I think it's a pretty solid position on their part.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are updating their position, so we're expecting to see some of that at the end of this week.
And,
The intention is it will be circulated, yes.
and just further to my question around the international visitor levy, have we had any direct communication with the government around receiving some money from that?
That is on the list of things to talk to the minister about, that the mayor's going to attend a meeting with at the end of the year.
Been invited to Wellington next week by the Prime Minister, and that's on the list.
Okay.
Along with a distribution of the increase of what they've whacked up at the airport.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to allow that just to disappear into Wellington. You can be rest assured.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Very good. The speaking order, Councillor Simpson, followed by Councillor Hills, Ferry, and then Henderson. So, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I absolutely support going out and asking Aucklanders around the bed tax or the levy. Sorry, it's not a tax. Rewind, levy. But my question, my budget question is that if we don't get it for whatever reason, where is the 7 million coming from? Do we have a plan B? Because, you know, I just want, you know, I'm absolutely happy about the visitor levy. I get these things mixed up. The visitor levy, the $100, and the bed levy. I'm happy about those discussions, but we have to put a budget together that if that doesn't happen, I believe we should still be funding major events, destination work, which is my understanding is 7 million. So can I just ensure that when we go to Aucklanders that they are very clear that if we don't, what are we saying here? If we don't get it from the government, we don't do it. I don't support that. I think if we don't get it from the government, we have to support it, and I'm just not quite sure where that 7 million is coming from. So can someone answer that question?
Yep. So our advice is, you know, there's a range of cost pressures, risks, and things we might have to deal with. So our strong advice is to make sure in the consultation document there is sort of budget flexibility, that we can adjust spending levels, investment, you know, rates if required as a last resort. So we have that flexibility, you know, that could be used as a, you know, to cope with that 7 million cost, along with any other pressures that may come about. But I think, you know, the consultation document, that doesn't mean the consultation document can't say that the preference is for a visitor levy, and that our strong view is that it shouldn't be paid for by the rates payers. As long as we don't say we absolutely will not fund it by rates or any other mechanisms, that kind of gives you the flexibility to make whatever decisions you need to make at the end of the process. So our advice is maintain the flexibility, state the preference, state the rationale for that, but don't roll out absolutely other options to adjust budgets.
Okay, thank you. Look, I'll accept that, but I want to make it very clear, Your Worship, that I believe that we need to fund this work in year 2, and in the LTP we had 0, all right? So I just want to make it really clear that I believe it's really important and it needs to be referenced in such a way that Aucklanders will know that we will fund this work.
Councillor Hills.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mayor and Jazz. I did have a question about local boards, but I think Julie's on the list, so I'm assuming she's covering it. Just quickly on the question there, and I know in the consultation document it'll be fuller, but just an applied levy of 2.5 to 3, do we need to add a bit more context to the resolution? Because it might, or was that work going to be done? Just because someone reading this today might be like, 2% to what? Obviously it's the hotel charge or whatever, but it doesn't, you know, we have had a risk before of the APTR that was not supported because that was a percentage on their rates. This is not what that is.
Oliver, answering that. This has been initiated by the industry. The industry invited me to a meeting where they said that this is what we would like, and the industry itself chose 2.5%. And so I don't. So
it's more
I'm not quite sure where the 3 came from, but the industry did say 2.5%, and it's 2.5% of the bill that a person for the accommodation part of a person's bill in either an Airbnb or a book a batch or a hotel. And so that if you're paying currently with $200 a night, you'd be paying $205 a night. But it would be listed as on their account saying you're paying $200 a night, $5 is going towards this accommodation levy, and that in each area they would explain what it's for. The people in Queenstown want it for a completely different reason than the people here. People here want it specifically for big events. It's been from that industry. In Queenstown, they want it to build housing for hotel workers, because their problem down there is it's too expensive to live there to actually clean a bed.
Yeah, just to clarify, Mayor, I definitely know what it means. I'm just making sure, and I guess if Jazz, did you want to clarify that there's enough wording up there? It just says 2.5 to 3%, but it doesn't actually say.
Well, I think that when we consult, there will be a bit more than 3 lines. We'll have quite a background to it, and the consultation document will have statements from leading players, most of all getting over the fact that last time when we tried the accommodation rate, it was based on the value of your property rather than how many people are using it, and it also produced an open warfare between Airbnb and the hotels, and so there will be statements from those sectors of the industry saying that they're not at war with each other. This is something that they would like to do, and it will be done in a manner that gives it the best chance of getting passed. I think it's going to be quite difficult for the government not to support this.
Richard, would it be helpful if after where it says 2.5 to 3%, we put of the bed night visitor level? Is that what you're after?
I think
it's of the accommodation cost. We're not putting on the drinks.
Yeah, obviously a lot of work has to be done behind the scenes, but just when we as a group approve a percentage but don't actually say what the percentage on, it can be a bit.
Would you like that added in? I think
well, it's just I mean, if Jazz and the Mayor think that that's appropriate or not.
I can understand where the council is coming from. Yeah, I think we can just add in those words.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I don't think it's particularly necessary. It will be addressed through the consultation document as it's drafted, but this is enough for the staff to get on with the draft.
I think we've had public assurance now. I was just making sure. Thanks, Chair. The other question, just to the 7 million, and I do take assurances, and I have gone back and forth with the Mayor's office a lot on this, but do we need a question that is clear that it says Aucklanders expect continued funding to fill the gap until a bed night? I take Ross's assurances that we will look to find the money, but when it comes down to D-Day in May, and we don't have any feedback from the community saying we back this money, whether it's a 0.18% rates rise or $9 a year or whatever it was, in the interim until the bed tax or bed night levy comes on, should we be making that clear? Because I do think there's a risk that we come to May and we go, well, the public didn't really say they wanted us to keep that money in, and then we drop off a significant number of events and event planning.
I think it's important to point out that we still paying $10 million. It's not like we're paying no money. And so, and I just don't want to have us go soft and increase our rates because of something or other. It's a bit of a fine game. If we put out, I mean, everyone wants to keep that going. We've heard from management somehow or other they're going to accommodate that if we have to. But if we go out saying that there isn't a problem, then Mr. Ducey's going to do nothing. And so we've got to have some pressure somewhere. And I can't believe that they're going to collect all that extra money at the airport and not give us $7 million of that if we kick up Bobsy Die. All right? There's plenty of ways out of this, but I don't want to signal an easy way.
Yeah, and I think I know you've already been having those conversations with government on their 300% increase on the border tax. But I am worried, Jazz. I don't know. This is the staff are going to say one thing, but the political side, we will be at risk of not having the public understood what potentially they've supported if we don't point out what's at stake. Like, I know playing chicken or whatever, or being very clear with our advocacy with government is important, but also the pipeline of events are very important.
So through the chair, I think I can respond to that. So the mayor has been very clear that he supports the events. He supports the staging of the events, and he supports them being funded in some way. It was the mayor's proposal that they are funded through the bed night levy. That was the 7 million indication for the upcoming financial year was for a partial year. So there will be other opportunities to look at how you can meet that funding gap, but the mayor's signal is that it's not going to be done through a rates increase above the 5.8% that he has advocated for.
I'll get the 7 million, mate. Don't worry about that.
But, okay, well, I guess it's on record now, but I do worry that that if we don't know, the public wouldn't mind paying $9 additional a year for 1 year to make sure we save all those vibrant events for the city, but we don't ask them. I do worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Never ask a question where you get an answer you don't want.
Okay, Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora, thank you. My concern is about the local board fairer funding aspect. What we've worked out is that we probably have a gap of around 6.5 million, possibly more, once we know more about cost pressures, to actually honour the fairer funding proposal as in the LTP. So I'm wanting to understand, at the moment we don't have anything specific on that up here, and that's not necessarily a problem, but what I want to understand is if we did decide to fund that from rates increase, do we have enough flexibility here that we could do that if there were public support and local board support and we couldn't come up with other options? Do we have enough wriggle room with what we're passing today for that to be possible, given that we're looking at maybe a 0.5% rates rise would cover that? Acknowledging the mayor doesn't want to necessarily go in that direction, but I just want to make sure we have that option if it's necessary.
Yes, I guess, going back to the point I made earlier, our strong advice is to have flexibility so that we can adjust, costs, capital investment, rates increases as needed, and something of the order of $6-7 million, should be accommodated, as long as we don't say absolutely we won't cut any spending or absolute maximums on the rates increase. As long as there's a bit of flexibility, that means that you can make those decisions in the new year, post-consultation, when you have better information around how you fund events and how you fund local activities. Okay. So the view is there should be enough flexibility there, as long as we don't make too many absolute statements, and we signal in the consultation document there is budget flexibility to deal with small changes. Okay. It's a very different situation to what we've had in previous budgets. We're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars of budget gaps. We're talking about some very small adjustments here.
Okay. And so I guess also seeking some reassurance for local boards. It's a very different situation across different local boards, and as they're going out to their consultation, they have their own consultation material that they sign off. They're getting some mixed messages at the moment about whether they should be looking at it, and a lot of this depends on the quantum they're looking at. Some local boards are looking at 600 million. Sorry, not 600 million. 600,000. 600,000 cut because of an inadvertent issue about where the cost pressures are now falling. That might not feel like a big amount off a $30 million budget. However, because they're in transition to fairer funding, they've still got to maintain the assets that they previously had. We haven't gone far enough into this process for them to have the flexibility to necessarily be able to accommodate those kinds of cuts in a hurry. So can we just get some, I guess I'm wanting some reassurance that we are going to be, that the fact that we don't have a resolution on that today doesn't preclude, sorry, too many negatives, but we still have the opportunity to look at how we're going to address this. We still have sufficient flexibility to look at some options to close that gap in whole or in part.
Yes, I think we should have that flexibility, provided we in the consultation documents, we maintain that flexibility. You know, when we're talking about, you know, 6 or 7 million of cost pressures, that's quite significant in terms of, you know, $30 million of LDI budget. Where we're heading is local boards having control over all of their budget, around 480 million, so it's a small proportion of that. We're not quite yet in the position where local boards are empowered, have all the information and can change and vary that broader cost base. That's kind of where we need to get to over the next few years, that local boards can manage within those costs, and we move to a situation where the funding of local boards is based off population, deprivation, and other factors, rather than just on where the asset costs fall. So we are in a bit of a transition. We think, you know, the cost pressures we're talking about are not the massive, not large budget gaps, they're small in the scheme of things, and we can work through that. So our advice is that, you know, local boards shouldn't have to feel like, you know, they need to rush out right now and consult on several cuts and major cuts to their LDI. We can work with it in terms of these broader numbers, and there should be enough flexibility to work through that. So there might be some adjustments, but it's not, they need to go and solve things immediately. That said, you know, if local boards can, you know, want to consult with the communities on relative priorities, and we'll spend a little bit of money here so we can spend money there, that's just sort of business as usual for local boards, and we'd sort of support that kind of them consulting on flexibility and priorities as they normally do.
Thanks, Ross. That's really good to hear that all put together like that. Thank you. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very good question. So I've got Deputy Chair Henderson, who will be followed by Councillor Newman, then Councillor Bartley, then Councillor Walker. So Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I've got numerous questions around planning and paying for growth. I don't know where I should put them. Should I put them to you, Jazz, and just have a crack? Cool, okay. Yeah, look, I suppose the main question for me is whether we have any detail on the relationship between the development that's being proposed in these things and the actual level of payment they're supposed to do. Thinking of an example, if you were developing in rural Rodney, say, those people would be reliant on one road, which might be several kilometres and might have impacts on intersections along that road. Are developers going to pay for that? Are they going to pay to fix these things? What's the deal?
I might start, and then I might let Ross address some of that stuff. So there is, I guess, in terms of the funding for that activity, there's a mix at the moment, which includes development contributions and other projects that are funded from either borrowing, or maybe some elements of targeted rates, etc. as well. So our expectation is that most of that additional growth cost is met through development contributions of some sort, or through some mechanisms, financing mechanisms that are ultimately funded still by that growth activity. So that is still the intention, but we are waiting for more advice on that.
Yeah, Cheers. Look forward to that advice too. I suppose just related to that, and I suppose you've already kind of answered it, but will developers be required to pay for the climate effects of developing in rural areas? Or is it just pipes and roads?
Sorry, Councillor, can you just repeat the question?
Will developers be required to pay for things like the climate effects of developing in rural areas? Or is it simply a matter of pipes and roads and physical things?
I don't think I can answer that question today, but I'll take that away and come back to you. Yep.
Thanks, so throw that in the advice section. I suppose another one will be, when we're developing our growth strategies, will we be giving sufficient weight to Watercare's recent findings that the central city suburbs are actually in the best position to take more growth?
Look, I'll just having a chat to the Mayor about it. These are conversations that we are still having with the Minister and central government as well, in terms of how we describe these opportunities in terms of growth. And again, this is a conversation for you all as elected members, as you get advice from staff about how you then phase and sequence growth through strategies like the future development strategy and then your DC policies that follow that as well.
Thank you. Acknowledging these are sort of more conversation starters than questions. But I've got one last one, and it's Thank you, councillor. In developing the proposal, and I've signalled this already, did we consider electricity resilience for disaster relief via schemes for solar panels on public buildings? Did we look at that?
That is an excellent question, and I appreciate that our conversation started. So electricity resilience has come up. We haven't had a great amount of conversation and advice about that, but I think that is something that from a mayor's office perspective, we had asked for some additional advice on. We didn't quite get that, but we will follow that up. And acknowledging Councillor Henderson that through the direction setting document, we did ask for a lot of advice around growth and other challenges that are facing the council organisation, particularly around infrastructure and paying for infrastructure. So we will bring that back to you as that develops.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add to that one of the ongoing discussions I'm having with Minister Bishop is the idea that growth pays for growth. Is it now at least accepted as kind of like a mantra? They're still coming to terms with quite what they're going to tell us to do yet too, so that the answers to your questions are difficult to a degree because the government are not quite sure what they're telling us as well. But I'm absolutely making sure that they understand that when they're imposing demands for growth on us, that they understand that growth has to pay for growth. And so there's a developing answer there, but it's coming within the parameters of the idea that growth pays for growth and isn't just an easy solution to mandate centrally to us.
Councillor Newman.
Good morning, Ross, and all of you. So my questions, just going back to a couple of matters that have been talked about. Ross, you'll appreciate, and I think that the Mayor and Mr. Singh appreciate the feedback from some of us around the cost pressures in the local board fair of funding model. Notwithstanding, so I give you the benefit of the doubt in terms of being able to try and identify what those cost pressures are and being able to accommodate it through a reallocation within the existing budget baseline. The most likely next update for us in terms of how that would affect those local board budgets will be February. Is that right?
Yes, we'll be working through a sort of full budget refresh as we do each year. That occurs in February, and that might be, we might get their answers reported back in March, so late February, early March kind of time frame. We'll have a better handle on what those cost pressures are. There's a range of different things moving around, things like electricity prices and other things, and that may change the number and may change which boards are impacted by how much.
Okay, at the time of that updated advice, because understanding, and certainly my vote hinges very much on keeping in faith with what we committed to in this particular area, fair of funding, the principle and the application, will the update in February also be able to address the measures to mitigate? Because I don't want to see those boards that had working towards a trajectory of fair of funding have to go through a reprioritisation in February because we don't have an answer. So when you're able to give the mitigations?
So we'll come with updated numbers and potential options, choices, mitigations through to the joint governance working group. So late Feb, early March, and then if there is any decisions around funding changes, that'll come to budget committee post that and go to local boards once decisions have been made. We'll give advice on all the range of different options, which all the way from local boards making changes, working with envelopes, to what would happen if what could be achieved if more funding is provided, or are there options to look at changes to funding to stay in line with the principles that were agreed as part of the fair funding. So staff won't be making any decisions or giving advice to local boards on any budget changes. That'll come through the governance process.
Advice as well as, I think part of the issue around the advice is ensuring that we comply with the timing for the transition for those local boards. But let's give you the benefit of the doubt for that because you're still working through those numbers. Chair, I'm just wondering, and I just want to, and maybe this has been picked up already, but with respect to Resolution B, I think that the amended wording should be applied bed night levy of 2.5 to 3% for commercial accommodation providers. I think that's what clarifies this because there does need to be some specificity as to who would be affected, and maybe that needs to be resolved. So that will be, so yep, check on that. Okay.
I think that's a little bit similar to what you were after too, Richard, so yeah.
Can we get a clarification on what a commercial provider is? Sorry.
Sorry.
Can we get a clarification on what those words actually mean?
Well, just getting advice if we put them in yet, Chris.
Okay.
Probably similar to the advice that was used when we adopted the accommodation provider targeted rate, but I mean, I do think, yeah, but I do think that we just need to get clarification because this isn't a levy. It might be a regional levy, but it's not applied to every category of operator.
Through you, Chair, I've just had a quick discussion. I don't think adding the words a bed night levy would be a problem, but I think defining the commercial operator side of things, because those actual parameters haven't been agreed, so I think it's probably unnecessarily risky in that respect, but I think adding the bed night levy is fine.
Okay, well, look, I guess my comment there, Chair, is almost certainly the lack of clarity around who will almost certainly provoke some feedback that possibly wasn't the intention, but you can expect that because there will be people who'll be wondering why this should apply to them, and others who will say, well, it should be applying wider than that. So, thank you.
I'll just thank you, Councillor. I'll just ask His Worship, because the Worship's the mover, I'm the seconder, if you're just happy to add in those words, a bed night levy. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. So bed night in front of the word levy. And I think Councillor Hills, that addresses your earlier comments as well. Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you. I have no issues with what's up here because it's really just what we're agreeing to publicly consult on. But I did want to back up what Councillor Hills was raising regarding the destination marketing and major events for TAU. I know the question the Mayor's wanting to ask the public is whether they support a fairer way of funding this activity, but I can understand where Councillor Hills is coming from to give the option to the public if they feel that this is something that's core to council and whether there is the option there for them to contribute to it. So some kind of certainty as opposed to, I'll find the 7 million, mate.
Okay, thank you for that. Did you want to respond? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, in terms of the specific questions, along with the, what the details of the support information, we'll come back with that in February. We'll also come back with the questions at that point. Here, because we haven't got an agreement with government around exactly what the scheme looks like, we can't necessarily kind of ask do you want the A, B, or C? What's really important here is trying to capture the preferences of Aucklanders. So we kind of need to design questions to say, well, what are the preferences? Would you how would you prefer? What do you think is the fairest way to pay for these things? And so getting so we need to design some questions that kind of give you a good evidence base around what Aucklanders' preferences are about the different ways of paying for events. As you've heard, the intention here is not, we're not asking the Aucklanders, do you think events are important? It's not about the value of the spend, it's about the fairest way to pay for it. So we'll come back with the details of the questions and support information in February, but it's about capturing preferences at this stage.
Okay, Councillor Walker.
Sure. I just want to put up a request around the information that I would suggest is necessary to support options around destination marketing. We know that Eden Park has had an expansion of its concerts from 6 to 12. We know the economic effects of things like Taylor Swift, if she had been able to play in Auckland. We know the impacts of things like Coldplay and Pink and big rugby matches and the like. So can we provide that information so that Aucklanders have got a clear idea on what they might be missing out on as compared to what they might be gaining, and that analysis covers off the economic and also the social and cultural effects, but particularly the economic effects as it goes to restaurants, cafes, accommodation, plane tickets, all of it. And we have much of this information because it's been provided to us in recent consent hearings. I think it's important that Aucklanders have that, because the 300,000 people for these extra 6 concerts will probably be wanting to go and see some of their popular musicians and stars. What does that look like if we don't have those things coming to Auckland? Might be a good way of bumping up the number of submissions. I think there'd be some popularity around that. Thanks.
So I'll take that as a question, Wayne. Just we'll put a question mark at the end of it.
It's a strong recommendation because we're past questions. I would assume that it's just part and parcel of what we should be going out with so that people know what the consequences are.
All right. Councillor Darby. Thank you, Councillor. Chris.
Thank you. And just a quick clarification for the Mayor. Just on the wording, Mayor or Jazz, at B, proposed regionally applied. There's no assumption there that we would be, spreading this like sticky jam all across Auckland, because we have heard, the local boards want more in that area, but the focus remains on major events, correct? Like major events as opposed to a little one here and a little one there, to satisfy, what we've heard from local boards, that they want a bit of a go at it. The focus remains on significant events.
It's what was requested from the industry was major events and destination marketing. And in Auckland, it was definitely major events was the dominant thing. But they also wanted to have, and I'm quite happy, that they would have a couple of representatives on whatever decision-making body decides what major events we support and don't support. Some major events are occurring without it, like this Saturday there's 28,000 people going to watch a soccer game. Who'd have thought? And so it is major events, definitely, plus destination marketing. Exactly what that is, I'm not quite sure, but the industry have asked that they would have some say in what ones were approved and not approved. So that's not going to be coming to the board here while we all put our hands up and like Coldplay but don't like the Philharmonic or vice versa. It would be a group that's qualified for that. I think that earlier in the day, Councillor Walker put out that we might get better small advisory groups for some things than what we've got now.
Okay, that's clear to me. I was just a bit concerned about going back to the problems of the past. No intention. And just Councillor Henderson asked a question about electricity resilience. Just with the AT hat on, the AT board is, I've actually asked at the board about 6 months ago, and we're getting a presentation on what's morphed not from electricity resilience, but into energy resilience, because you've got to take into account all the other energy forms as well. But the intention was just to make sure that, you know, things like CRL and ferry charging and everything else that we're doing in the energy space, that we do have a resilience plan in that area. So we're hearing from the energy sector coming into AT. So if the core council is now embarking to do that work, it might be best to check in with AT, which is well advanced in that work.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, very good, very good. Any more questions? No more. Yeah.
Apologies, Chair. I do have a question, and it's for Ross, and this is not. And I know people hate it when councillors say this is not supposed to be a criticism, but it's going to sound like one. On the local board OPEX pressures, how, like, we factor in the LTP our best estimates for audit, right? And we're actually slightly better on interest rates, slightly, and we've added in inflation expectations in there, etc. How is it possible that 3 to 4 months after we've approved those numbers, are they quite, what's looking like could be quite wildly different than our expectations for those cost pressures? I'm just a bit concerned that we could just pop up 6.5 million sort of 4 months in.
Yeah, maybe I'll get Brian Chan to come up and provide a bit of information there. Part of the answer here, as Brian will probably touch on, is, you know, electricity and gas prices have moved pretty rapidly in recent months. The other bit is there's some things around the new pools and leisure contracts and the living wage component that's been agreed within that. But Brian, over to you.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, I think Ross has covered most of it. I think just with respect to utilities, so they continue to move quite rapidly, as you'll see in your own sort of household budgets. We do know in the longer term, 2026, there'll be more sort of capacity coming on. I think, you can sort of look up the capacity coming on with solar and like, but actually we've had very little new generation recently, and I think so some of those prices can swing quite rapidly. The decision around living wage for contracted sites was made subsequent to the LTP, so that's sort of new, and that's about 2 million of the 6.5 as well. And we've also, and again, this is also fluid, but we've caught up on some of the deferred capital in the community facility space, and actually so that's a good news story, but then that comes with additional repairs and maintenance and consequential costs. So we're continuing to update those things and monitor those.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. I just want to also welcome Mike. Good to see you. Thank you for being here, Councillor Lee. Number of questions. So, look, councillors, I want to thank you for your excellent questions. They've been very, very helpful. Now, I want to open up the opportunity for any comments, any reinforcements, any debate. Richard, thank you.
I just had a brief comment on the bed night, and I think that Hospitality New Zealand Tourism Industry Aotearoa and the Hotel Council of Aotearoa do support the general direction as long as it's fair, as long as it's nationally approved. They don't like the regional variants, probably because of competition, I guess, across the country, but they do expect to be engaged with, and any legislation would do that. But I just wanted to make it clear that those organisations have given tentative support for a bed night levy. The other comments for me, and it probably was just on electricity, and it is those long-term changes we do make. With the climate initiatives a few years ago, and some people scoffed at that, around switching out our gas boilers in the pools for electric, and putting, to Councillor Henderson's point, we are putting solar panels across quite a lot of community buildings right now. Glenfield Leisure Centre is coming up soon. Those aren't just about climate, it's about also trying to regulate and hold cost jumps like these gas and electricity prices. So I think we need to continue to focus, and there is budget in here for that, on those long-term funding outcomes that look like they're just about climate, but actually a lot of the time they're about reducing cost pressures. The electric buses are doing the same with petrol. They're flattening out those expectations, and solar in our community buildings will help reduce those pressures as well. And I thank you to the Mayor and Jazz on the 7 million and that focus, and we will obviously have that discussion in May, but I I am nervous about not having a clear question in there because I just hope it's not used in a different way in May to say, oh, the community didn't give much feedback, so we're just going to dip out that money, which is so crucial. We've seen with Pearl Jam and Coldplay and Pink and FIFA last year what that can do to the city's vibrancy for Aucklanders, but also visitors, and it fills up the bars and hotels and everything like that. Yes, it's about who should pay and where, but I do worry about carving out a hole for a short-term period, which can really affect that pipeline. We're seeing that with construction right now, that pipeline of workers and expertise are heading overseas to where, places like the state governments are investing significantly in infrastructure. Those state governments are also investing significantly, more than we ever can, in events and major events and destinations. So we just need to be careful there. But largely, this is good to have a pretty stable long-term plan approach in the first year, or technically the second year, I guess, of the LTP. So hopefully it's pretty straightforward, but we do need more information coming into the new year around our local boards, because they're pretty concerned about those changes when we kind of all celebrated, no one misses out, and then 6 months later they may. So thanks.
Very good, Councillor. Much appreciate that. Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora. I just wanted to speak to the local board funding aspect and debate, even though it's not on front of us in the resolutions. And we've had a bit of discussion about it, and I guess I wanted to take the opportunity to put in a punt with my colleagues when we do come to decision making, to think really seriously about filling the whole gap so that we can maintain the proper transition to fairer funding we committed to in the long-term plan. And that which at the moment is looking as like it's 6.5 million, but we have more cost pressures to potentially come. One of the issues that's arisen with this, which I did put in an email to everyone, hopefully it made sense, it's took me a while to get my head around it, is that because historically local board funding has been primarily based on assets, the local boards with more assets are the ones that are not getting top-ups through fairer funding, and they're also the ones that face greater cost pressures, because it is the cost pressures, the costs like utilities that hit facilities more, that are the ones that are coming through at the moment. So they're sort of getting a double whammy, and I don't think any of us intended that in terms of this transition to fairer funding. We did intend to transition, not to just go straight there, and because of the way the finance maths works, we are inadvertently, I think, making a much faster and more blunt transition than was intended. So I would just like people to think seriously about how we close that gap, to what extent people are comfortable to close that gap, what that looks like, acknowledging local boards are doing a lot of the really important, grassroots local work in the climate space, at local economic development, often relationships and projects working with iwi. They're doing some really important stuff, as well as providing libraries and swimming pools and all of those kinds of things. So people could think seriously about how we close that gap. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Wonderful. No more speakers? No? Okay. Yeah.
Briefly, in case it's the last time I get to say anything really on the matter, that's what I said earlier. I guess the key thing here is that we discussed this as our board on Monday at our board meeting, the Mayor's proposal and the rationale behind that. And we are happy to support that to go forward, or certainly I am, I'll vote that way. But again, I think the paragraphs 8, 9, 10 are very important in terms of maintaining what's been done in the LTP, and particularly from our perspective, the Māori Outcomes Fund remains intact. So again, we'll watch that as it goes through, but we'll be happy to support the recommendations. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'll put the recommendation to everybody by voice. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much, members. Okay, we'll move on to, in your agenda, Councillors, item 10. This is the annual plan, other rates and fees matters. Mr. Duncan's coming forward. I'll just confirm for you the purpose is to recommend changes to some targeted rates and fees and charges for consultation as part of next year's annual plan. We have a motion. We have a motion up there. You should have it in your papers. So could I move that and ask for a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Okay, on that note, Andrew, I'll pass over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. This report recommends that you consult on a range of changes to waste management rates and a few fees and charges that aren't covered in the Mayor's proposal. These ensure that we are continuing to recover the costs of these services fairly off the users, either through the rate or the fee. We also talk about some changes to speak with the community in regard to some business improvement districts. Myself and my colleagues are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Open that up for questions. Thanks, Chris.
Just on the recommendation H, I'm finding that, if we could scroll up, and I've read the the narrative in the report. Now, there's an issue there with that compliance of that particular society. The way the recommendation is written, it just looks very contradictory. We can't actually. What we're saying there is we agree to consult on not setting a rate. Can you just explain this language, because it's very confusing to me.
So we chose this particular language.
Sorry, Andrew, just your mic so those online can hear.
So this language was chosen based on advice from our legal advisors around the nature of the proposal we were making for this rate. So it's been carefully framed in that way. We will endeavour to make sure that in the consultation materials that what we're asking the community is easily understood, but in terms of the resolution it's been phrased particularly for based on legal advice.
Okay, look, if it stacks up, then good. Just in terms of one area of fees and charges, not mentioned here, and I'm not expecting all the fees and charges to be mentioned. I have asked some questions recently. I've cited some examples, and it is in the street trading, the use of the public areas for dining, outside dining, and I've discovered a lot of the dining is not getting picked up. It's not being charged, and my concern is the audit process is not robust or absent in many parts, and the council is missing out on a lot of revenue. And I just gave a few examples, and I asked, is this subject to an outdoor license? And I discovered license that had lapsed 3 years ago and had not been renewed, but the dining was continuing. And for me, that's a loss of revenue, and that means ratepayers are subsidising that. So my question is, in these fees and charges that are collected, I want to have confidence that we've got audit systems in place to make sure that the example like that I've just given you, without detail, are not occurring, that revenues are being collected where this body expects them to be collected.
We will speak with our colleagues in the relevant areas and look to secure an answer to your question. I'm not able to answer that directly now, but that's a fair comment, and it'll be important that we are endeavouring to do that as best we can to ensure everyone's treated fairly, and we'll follow that up with our team and get an answer to you.
Well, just generally, tell us now, do we have robust audit processes that pick up these examples that I'm giving? Are we confident that we've got good audit processes?
I can't answer that question myself. Rather than having 60 staff here because of all the different things, I'm just pulling everything together and helping with the broad communication of those, but we will get you an answer to that question, Councillor.
Okay, just in terms of speaking order, I've got the Mayor, Councillor Newman, Councillor Walker, Councillor Turner and Councillor Simpson. Okay.
I was just wanted a follow-up question on item H, which Councillor Darby raised. I'm not sure if that's the right solution. Hunter's Corner had a BID and someone nicked the money. And so we're now going to go back and consult that they're not compliant. I mean, it's very hard to be compliant if someone does something like that. And I wonder really if the solution isn't that we better manage the BID system and consulting on not setting the rate. I'd rather remove that and just say, well, can't management go in and have a look at what went wrong at Hunter's Corner? Because there is a group of people who want to set it up again, but they're not allowed to get hands on the money because it's not compliant. So the money's there and no one can get it because the guy who nicked it has buggered off. And so it's a terrible punishment for the good people who are left behind. And so I don't think that's the right... We don't consult when something goes seriously wrong. I think we actually manage it. So I'd rather you took H out, actually, and just sorted it out.
So the legal reason for including the phrase and the way we've framed it is because the LTP made provision for the rate and therefore we have to consult on not setting it. I'm advised, but Katie can confirm that.
I think we're about to have a good case of what sometimes we shouldn't have so many legal people, but try and prove me wrong.
Through the chair, so I just want to clarify. So there's two aspects. There's the bid system, and I understand that the bid team are working with the relevant people from the Hunters Corner Association. For the purposes of today and the annual budget, because the bid system uses a targeted rate and our LTP provides for a targeted rate to be set for this particular bid for the relevant financial year, and to not set that rate would be a change to our rating system. There's a technical requirement to consult if we're not planning on setting that rate. So that's why we've recommended to include consultation on not setting the targeted rate if the compliance issues are not resolved by the relevant date.
All right, okay.
If I can just try and help a little bit here. So it may not be the most elegant resolution, but I guess what we're saying is that if we don't have a resolution like this passed, well, you're kind of backed into a corner where you've got no choice but to go and set that rate and take rates off the ratepayers for this. That's probably not a position you want to be in. You want to have some options and some choices as we work through the border bid issues. So that's kind of why it's the way it is, to give you the option to not set the rate if that's what you choose to do.
All right, Councillor Newman.
Good morning, Andrew, and apologies because I'm not sure if you will be able to answer this. This is on the animal management fee changes. Just you here today? Thank you. Look, this really echoes some concern that the Manaroba Local Board actually raised here, and that's with respect to the proposed. And okay, so the recommendation is to consult on a proposed increase of the dog adoption fees from $350 to $450. I'm not sure how much revenue we would anticipate garnering. There's only a couple hundred dogs each year that I think are adoptable from the Manukau shelter, but I can see that increase in the fee levy would be quite a disincentive for some potentially well-meaning people to actually go through with an adoption of an adoptable dog. So I'm just wondering, is there some numbers available to justify that one? I get the principle, by the way.
Is
Eric here, sorry. So there are about 160 adoptions a year. So the revenue increases will be about $16,000 per year. We consider that the increase is not going to massively change the affordability of this fee.
Okay, well, in South Auckland, a 28% increase in the fee is quite material. I'm just wondering, between now and when we have a further discussion about this fee through you, Chair, if I could ask Mr. Tucker to provide some further advice as to the overall cost of the animal management operation in relation to the program for euthanizing and cremating the dogs that are not claimed and not adoptable. I support that, don't get me wrong, but there continues to be a massive increase in the overall cost of this activity, and it's not all going to be able to be a cost recovered.
Yes, we can make further information on costs available in due course. There's some information on costs in the report. I note with the dog adoption that the fee is $350 at the moment. It's supposed to increase to $450. The actual cost is around $700 to $800. So if we were to just apply a cost recovery lens, you're talking about a 100% increase in the fee. So what's been proposed here is it is a bit of a subsidy, but it's kind of trying to get that cost recovery at a reasonable level, acknowledging the importance of encouraging dog adoptions. But yes, we can provide further information around the cost drivers, and cost recovery as we work through it. What we're looking to do here is get agreement for consultation. It's not final decisions. People can make submissions, and we can provide further information before we make final decisions in May, June next year.
Well, thank you, Chair, for that information. I get the principle. We are talking about an increase in the number of dogs which are not adoptable, actually is now, that are being euthanized, is now running into the thousands. I think 4,000 and something last financial year, with the vast majority coming out of South Auckland. So there is clearly some complex issues there, and price point, frankly, some of these dogs, frankly, if they are adoptable, I'd literally want to, if we've got the right person out there to take them, I'd literally want to pay them to take them away. So, but thank you, Chair, for that. I do think that we'll need some further advice on the cost of this overall operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just an update on the speaking order. It will be Councillor Walker, followed by Councillor Turner, then the Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Ferry. Oh, you've withdrawn yours? Okay.
No, I'll vacate in light of wanting an early Christmas.
Goodness. Yeah, good on you, Wayne. Ken.
Thank you. Just again on that bid rate, and I back up the Mayor on that. We've made bid changes though. We have now a minimum rate. Like there is a bid in place. They are collecting the money. I understood from your response that there's money sitting there waiting for them to have if they are allowed it. I was going to ask when it first came up was, were we in dispute? Obviously we are in some way. Is this some sort of penalty? So I'm very supportive of allowing the people to move forward. Is the changes in our bid rate, in our bid structure? I understand there's a minimum amount of money they have to collect now.
I might just get Alistair Cameron, who's online, to answer that question and give a bit of that sort of broader context.
Thank you. Through the chair, look, as a general rule, yes, there is a minimum rate for the different business associations. With regard to the specific bids where we're proposing not striking the targeted rate, we are trying to work through the issues with those business associations. I just want to be clear that, you know, if we cannot resolve those issues, that would like the option to not strike the targeted rate if it's not resolvable.
But is it not correct that bids have all been given, all the smaller bids? Is this a smaller bid, and is it correct that all the smaller bids have been given a target that they have to have their income meeting?
Are we talking about the Hunter's Corner bid here, Councillor?
Yeah, well, I don't know Hunter's Corner, but I know other small bids that have recently had to meet us new criteria.
There is a minimum, but they've been given a number of years to work to build up towards that minimum level. The issues with the Hunter's Corner bid relate to the sort of governance and management of that bid. Currently, in the current financial year, the bid rate has been set, but it's been set at $0 because there was not the confidence that those paying the targeted rate would see any benefit whatsoever from receiving if they were rated to contribute to that business association. I see Jill's online as well. Jill, have you got anything to add to that?
Thank you. The bid team has been working strategically with Hunter's Corner since late 2022, and councillors are correct to pick up that it has serious issues that we're dealing with. It currently collects $132,000 a year, and there are multiple parties involved with the situation. And to date, we have provided to the party that we're working with a list of actions they need to have completed. But as the gentleman before said, if the actions are not completed, we're trying to have a situation where we have options for the local board to decide for the 25-26 year whether they would like to strike the targeted rate, recommend striking the targeted rate or not.
Okay, thank you. Seems to be a very strong way of managing a smaller problem, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any more questions? If not, Andrew, thank you very much. I want to thank you, Andrew, and Aaron and Eric for putting the paper together. All right, councillors, we're into debate and comment. Are there any? It's moved and seconded, isn't it? Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, on that note, councillors, I'll put that on the voices, please. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. We've just got one more item before lunch. Yeah, before we finish. So that's item 11. I'll just go through the process here. Thank you, councillor. So this is a summary of the Budget Committee workshops, briefings and related confidential information. There's no discussion on that, so if we put the recommendation up there. Yep, you've moved by Member Tāpere, second by Councillor Walker. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you. Any comments? No? Okay, very good. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? I declare that carried. Very good. Okay, so the very last item was consideration of extraordinary business, which I understand there is none. Okay, well, look, thank you very much for today's Budget Committee and your participation. It's kind of finished sooner than I thought, so well done all of you.
Well done,
well done all of you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As a reward,
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is a light lunch available to you, and I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.